Shalom family, welcome to today. This week's Torah portion is Devarim, which means words, and it's Deuteronomy 1:1 through 3:22. Deuteronomy is the fifth and final book of the Torah, and it quotes Moses' parting words in the last weeks of his life. In this week's Parsha, Moses is recapping the past. He talks about God's command to enter the land, appointment of judges, spies, and disbelief, 38 years of desert wandering, victory over Sihon and Og, land for tribes settling east of the Jordan, and encouragement for Joshua. Today, I want to discuss something that had me hung up while I was reading this week's Parsha. Let's start by reading Deuteronomy 1:22 through 24. It says, "Then all of you came to me and said, 'Let us send men ahead to spy out the land for us and bring back a report about the route we are to take and the towns we will come to.' The idea seemed good to me, so I selected 12 of you, one man from each tribe. They left and went up into the hill country and came to the valley of Eshcol and explored it." Then Moses goes on about how the Israelites rebelled against God by not believing he would go before them and fight for them to seize the promised land. Therefore, only their children would live to enter the land. And in Deuteronomy 1:37, Moses says, "Because of you, the Lord became angry with me also and said, 'You shall not enter it either.'" But we know from Numbers 20 that it was Moses' own rebellion when he struck the rock to bring forth water from it that angered God. And it was that moment that Moses did not trust God enough to honor him as holy before the Israelites. And that's the real reason why God refused to let him enter the land. So did Moses lie in his speech, or did he just remember the events incorrectly? After comparing a bunch of scriptures and sitting with them prayerfully, I knew there was a piece of info I was missing. So I decided to ask Rabbi Google. And what I found was I am not the only one stumped by this. I read a bunch of theories, but none satisfied my spirit until I came to an explanation of Moses' sin at the rock that gave me an eye-opening new perspective. So that's what I'm going to share today. So throughout the Israelites' journey in the wilderness, whenever they would rebel against God, provoking his wrath, causing him to want to destroy them, Moses, as frustrated as he too was by the people, Moses would still intercede before God on behalf of the Jews, and then God would seemingly change his mind. But of course, every time God threatened destruction, he already knew Moses and Aaron would defend the people. But when the people complained about having no water at the desert of Zin, right after Moses and Aaron buried their sister, the two brothers, perhaps because of their grief, had enough with the Israelites. They went to God as they always did, but this time, instead of wrath and threats of destruction, God plainly, without any hint of anger, tells the men exactly how to get the water. Moses then does what the Lord instructed, but he does it in his own wrath. This reveals Moses' attitude toward the Israelites and his lack of faith in God at this time. You see, God did not threaten destruction of the people in this instance because he knew that this time Moses would not intercede on their behalf. At this point, Moses believes the people are too rebellious to fulfill God's promises, and in God's eyes, that means Moses is not losing faith in the Israelites, but rather losing faith in him. So, back to this week's Parsha, and my question, was Moses lying or forgetful? The answer is neither. Moses linked the Israelites' rebellion to the punishment God cast upon him because their rebellion was constantly bringing him closer to that loss of faith. The point Moses is making to the generation that will enter the land without him and every generation thereafter is never lose hope in God's promises. No one is too weak or too rebellious for our holy, powerful, miraculous God to work his glory through. My prayer today is we reflect on the promises of God, and if our faith in any of them is wavering, I pray God renews it. I linked a list of 160 of God's promises in the description below, as well as the article that answered my question and inspired this Devo. So feel free to check those out. And I pray you have a blessed and restful Shabbat. And I'll see you next week. I love you all. Bye-bye. Shabbat Shalom.